Hey guys, what's going on? James here, and in this video today, we're going to be taking a look at Bucky Brooks' NFL Mock Draft 1.0 and who he has the Tampa Bay Buccaneers selecting. Now, he has a lot of quarterbacks being taken. He has 5 teams taking a wide receiver. Will the Tampa Bay Buccaneers be one of those teams? At the top of the board, it's been pretty standard between Jeremiah and Brooks, Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels. You keep on going down the list. Not really a ton of surprises, all things considered, in my opinion. He has the Saints taking an offensive tackle. The Falcons are taking an edge in Dallas Turner. You keep on going down the list here for to find the Tampa Bay Buccaneers now that their draft spot has been solidified at pick 26. Bo Nix going to the Rams is pretty interesting, in my opinion, but you keep on going down. You have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers selecting Keon Coleman with the 26th overall pick. A lot of Bucs fans should be familiar with Keon Coleman. He went to Florida State. He was one of the biggest reasons as to why Jordan Travis had such a large amount of success in 2023. He finished the year with 658 receiving yards, 11 receiving touchdowns. And I know that on paper, that might not sound like a big deal, but whenever you consider Jordan Travis had 20 passing touchdowns this year, Tate Rodemaker had 5, it's pretty significant. He had almost half of the passing touchdowns from the Florida State quarterbacks this year, and they also accounted for combined a little over 3,200 receiving yards. So, when I look at it, also you got to remember Florida State wasn't necessarily a team that was passing the football a ton. Again, you take a look here, just 424 attempts between basically all the quarterbacks that Florida State had this year between Jordan Travis, Tate Rodemaker, and Brock Glenn. And Keon Coleman was still the top. You had Johnny Wilson in there getting some work as well, but it was essentially Keon Coleman. And he's a big wide receiver. I mean, you take a look at what he is, 6'4", 210 pounds. My goodness. Even in the blurb here from Bucky Brooks talks about how Mike Evans has an impending free agency. Wide receiver 1 is going to be at the top of the Buccaneers needs list. Coleman is a pass-catching phenom with outstanding ball skills and leaping ability. So he's a big-bodied win 50-50 ball type of wide receiver, very similar to what Mike Evans is in his NFL career. I want to take a look and see if they have any type of comparison, so to speak, with Keon Coleman. So they think he's going to be more of a Drake London type of wide receiver. Drake London was a former first-round draft pick in his own right. Keon Coleman seems like he very well could be the same thing. But Keon Coleman, he also went to Michigan State in 2022. He had 798 receiving yards, 7 receiving touchdowns there. You take a look at how Michigan State did in 2022. Another situation where Keon Coleman was one of the top, he was the top receiving option over there at Michigan State as well. He went over to Florida State and was still able to put up some really good stats overall and have good team success. 13-1 was a great year for Florida State overall, and Keon Coleman's a guy who, I will say, I think Mike Evans is going to be back, so this is kind of assuming, Bucky Brooks assuming, that Mike Evans won't be back, or very probably won't be back, but I think even if he is back, taking Keon Coleman with a first-round pick isn't the worst decision in the world. I mean, you have Mike Evans, who he is going to be 31 before next season. That is notable. You're going to have Chris Godwin, who is not necessarily getting up there in age per se. I believe Chris Godwin is going to be 28 years old when the next season starts, but point being is the Buccaneers could use some more depth at wide receiver. We've been talking about this. He's going to be 28, it looks like, by the time next season starts. But he's still going to have, let's say, 4 or 5 years under his belt. Hopefully it is with Tampa Bay. Mike Evans probably got 2-3 years left, probably 3 or 4 maybe, I don't know, of his own. But getting a guy like Keon Coleman, we talked about how the Buccaneers need depth at wide receiver, need a wide receiver 3. You get a big guy like Keon Coleman. I mean, the Bucs have a basketball team out there. Chris Godwin coming in here at 6'1", 209. Mike Evans being, if I can find his height real quick, Mike Evans being 6'5", 225, and then Keon Coleman being 6'4", 215. That's a basketball team. And that's one heck of a group of wide receivers for Baker Mayfield or whoever the quarterback may be, and that's a good group for Dave Canales or whoever the offensive coordinator may be. We've talked about this in separate videos, to give them a lot to work with. and the quarterback a lot to throw to. So that's great. I don't mind the idea of the Bucs taking a wide receiver here in round number 1, depending on what they do with the remainder of the offseason as well, because you also think edge, cornerback, interior offensive line. These are all things that the Bucs maybe will and probably should consider in round 1. So maybe it does feel like a bit of a luxury pick for wide receiver. I wouldn't hate it, but also I would be thinking pretty heavily also about those position groups and how big of a need it is for the Bucs. I mean, Kool-Aid McKinstry goes the pick before. We had talked about in the previous mock draft from Daniel Jeremiah. Rakestraw was in there from Missouri, so there's definitely a lot of other needs. Now if the Buccaneers can hash out some of those needs in free agency, or may decide that there's some guys that are starting caliber in, say, rounds 2 and 3, exactly what they got this year with Yaya Diaby and Cody Mock, then hey, ball out, go for a wide receiver, get a basketball team, Keon Coleman, Florida State guy, only for a year, but still got a lot of love in the Bay Area, and it'd be a cool pick. But, at the end of the day, we will have to wait and see, obviously, with these mock drafts. Once more information comes out about what these teams are doing, the more information we are going to get, right? That's just as simple as that. I mean, like Braylon Trice would be an interesting pick there. Kenyon Mitchell, Chop Robinson, Chris Jenkins out of Michigan. Defensive line could also be a need, depending on what you think about Mr. Logan Hall. There's definitely just some other things to consider there, right? I mean, like, obviously this guy isn't on or wasn't available for the Bucs pick, but you take a look at Troy Fautanu from Washington. I mean, Jason Light likes his Washington guys. There's just some other options in there. Jackson Powers Johnson, big, interior offensive lineman, could be a huge guy as well. Again, one thing that's so interesting to me is, as far as I could tell, no Michael Penix and no J.J. McCarthy. This is the second mock draft now where we haven't seen either one of those guys, even in the later first round. I mean, those are guys who haven't even been coming up. I mean, Bo Nix has been consistently up there in the teens. You've had, of course, the top 3. I mean, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and Caleb Williams. But we're 2 mock drafts in now between Jeremiah and Brooks, and no Michael Penix, no J.J. McCarthy in the first round. Now, I know for the Bucs, obviously, we've been talking about Baker Mayfield and love that, but and even a lot of these teams down here don't necessarily need a quarterback. Like, I don't know, maybe San Francisco would consider it. I don't know. Like, Brock Purdy has been pretty darn good, but could you upgrade? I don't know. But it is interesting, man. Like, would the Pittsburgh Steelers maybe take a quarterback? I don't know. The Rams, that makes sense to me. It just seems like there's a lot of teams that might not take a quarterback. I don't know. It's interesting, man. Maybe that'd be an opportunity for the Bucs in the second round, but round 1, no quarterback, two mock drafts in a row, and a lot of teams in the later rounds not getting a quarterback. So pretty darn interesting there, if you ask me. But I would love to get your guys' thoughts and opinions on this. What do you think about Keon Coleman? Again, big wide receiver, getting comparisons to Drake London. I think he'd be a pretty darn good fit. He was the leading receiver 2 years in a row for the teams that he played for. Again, once in 2022 for Michigan State, once in 2023 for Florida State. Was a reason those 2 teams had success, was a reason that those quarterbacks were successful. Again, people forget, like, Jordan Travis was a Heisman candidate before he went down with his injury. I mean, that was a fantastic year for him. And even, taking a look at the statistics for Michigan State in 2022, obviously, in terms of overall team success, things didn't go well, but, Pete Thorne, he eventually went on to Auburn, so shout out Peyton Thorne. Good for him, I suppose. But, he was even a guy who, in 2022, 19 touchdowns, 7 of those were to Keon Coleman. So, he's just a good receiver, dude. He's a guy that can be an outside threat, can be a guy that can just be a lethal weapon in an offense. Potential to be a number 1 receiver somewhere down the line. The Bucs don't necessarily have as bad of a need at number 1 wide receiver as Bucky Brooks may think, because he's assuming Mike Evans is leaving, and I am not assuming that. But he's a guy that can grow and learn and develop behind 2 of the best big body wide receivers in the league, in my opinion, and that would be good, but I also think that that would be a bit of a luxury pick right now before the Bucs make any other types of moves in the offseason. But what do you guys think? Again, let me know your thoughts and opinions about this down in the comment section below. I'd love to hear it. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hope y'all enjoyed. As always, guys, I'll see you all in the next video or the next live stream. But until then, and as always, guys, goodbye for now, and go Bucs.